Hello, and welcome to Seeking Heaven, the Near-Death Experience and Other Phenomena. I'm your host, Tamara Caulder Richardson, a 6-time near-death experiencer and an evidential psychic medium, afterlife speaker, and your host for today. And I wanted to, if you don't know about the channel, watch my previous episodes, subscribe, watch, and like. And I'll be offering membership perks soon. Really fun, exciting stuff. So stay tuned. Today that we have, oh my gosh, I've been so excited. I had to I have just, so excited looking at the work that he's done. We have today a special UFO expert, author, and researcher. He does many things. He's also does paranormal investigation, but he is best known for his work in alien encounters, alien research, and his name is Preston Dennett. And I want to tell you a little bit about Preston. He's a very impressive resume, so I want to go over his bio a little bit. He's been investigating UFOs since 1986, and he discovered with his family and friends, he has personal experiences, which maybe he'll share a couple of these otherworldly encounters. And since then, he's documented, researched several people that have had firsthand witness encounters with aliens and paranormal phenomena. He is also a field investigator with MUFON, with Mutual UFO Network, as well as, like I had mentioned earlier, a paranormal researcher, as well as ghost hunter. And he's an author of, I need a drum roll, 27 books and still going. And we're going to talk about that because he said he's working on his next 28th book. He's also had 100 articles written about UFOs and the paranormal. And these articles have appeared in magazines such as Fate, Atlantis Rising, MUFON UFO Journal, Nexus, Paranormal Magazine, UFO Magazine, Mysteries Magazine, Ufologist, Phenomena Magazine, Outer Limits Magazine, and others. He's had his writings translated in many languages such as German, Portuguese, French, Russian, and Icelandic. He's also appeared on many numerous radio and television shows, as well as he has been written up in the newspaper with the LA Times and the LA Daily News and the Dallas Morning News, and as well as other newspaper. He has taught classes on these paranormal subjects and lectures across the USA. And he's talking to us from California, where I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I am going to bring him on. Preston, so nice to have you here.
Thanks, Tamara. Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having me on.
I am so excited. So there's so much I want to cover with you because you are just a wealth of information. And I love, because we had talked, previously before, and you have such childlike wonder about really any mysteries in life, but especially this topic. And I mean, that wasn't the route my life took, although I've always been very interested in it. And I just have so much to ask. So I want to, first of all, find out about this 28th book that you're writing. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. I'm pumping them out. I love doing this. Yeah, my 28th book is called Wondrous, 25 True UFO Encounters. And it covers a really wide variety of types of UFO cases, some really interesting USO encounters, unidentified submersible objects, some incredible sightings with like telepathic contact, people who've been taken on board, people who've had face-to-face contact.
Say that last part again, Preston. You kind of went blanky blank.
People who have been taken on board a craft.
Okay, start that over again, Preston. You bleeped out. We'll edit that part out. You went out for a minute. Okay.
Yeah.
So you left with USO. So maybe you start like the range. What's in the book?
Yeah. This book covers a wide range of encounters. A really interesting USO account, unidentified submersible object. Some sightings involving telepathic contact. People have had face-to-face encounters while outside their home or in their home, and my favorite, people have been taken on board a craft. A couple of government whistleblower accounts. So really a wide range of really extensive UFO encounters.
So this is 35 plus years of research.
Yeah, 35. Can you believe it? Jeez.
No, not to date you, sorry. But it's impressive. And especially you're saying from different sources, not just from individuals, but you probably, people with that don't want their name published, right? A government authority. So it does it sounds like it covers a wide span. Now, when you're now you said you're of course, you know, you started with MUFON and you do a lot of your own research too. Is that basically interviewing different people that have had encounters? Is that what that usually entails?
Yeah, that's kind of where I've spent a lot of my energy and focus, is interviewing people firsthand. You know, I am, of course, very interested in cases like Roswell and the whole UFO field, but I like original firsthand cases that people haven't heard before, because you know, there's a lot of books out there that publish old cases and go over and over some of these older events, but this is an ongoing phenomena.
It is, yes.
And, yeah, they're not going away. They're here now. Someone's having an encounter right now. I'm pretty sure of it. So,
and so, you know, before we get into, you know, we have a topic today that that you said is near and dear to your heart, which is aliens that heal, which is really beautiful. But before we go there, I kind of want to put a little groundwork with as far as this whole subject with the audience watching in terms of aliens. Now, from your experience, is there one or two? Is there bunches? Like, how many are there? Several races, and are some good or some bad?
Oh yeah, there's more than one or two. I can tell you that. It's really hard to figure this out, because there are a lot. I think in my own research, I think this is borne out by other researchers, what we do see the most are what we would call grays, which I'm sure you know are the short little guys, big bald heads, large eyes. There's a wide variation of those.
Yes.
You know.
And we have a picture here.
Yep.
And you will go back to that. You can tell us, well, unless you want to tell us what they're doing here. The little fellow with the, or is he putting something in, or a light source? Is that one of the healing ones?
Yeah, that's probably the most common thing that happens when someone has, say, an onboard encounter. They're physically examined. The ETs seem to be very interested in us physically, but it definitely moves well beyond that. But yeah, grays are by far the most popular, whether it's a 3-foot tall gray or 4 or 5 foot tall, or even taller, tall whites, I guess you might call them. So I'm gonna say 50-60% of the cases I get involve some variation of the grays. There are lots of other types. I would say the 3 or 4 main types are grays, human looking, look just like us, really, but usually described as being very beautiful and strong. Also, praying mantids. I find that's really curious to me. I'm like, okay, praying mantis. All right. But that's, I get a number of those accounts.
Well, that's what Mimic. Remember the movie Mimic? And they were like praying mantis. And a lot of people, it freaked them out because I think it was so close to, the alien.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but why not? Why mantis? That's like, why not ladybugs, or horses, or you know what I mean?
So ladybugs aren't really as scary as a praying mantis that's like 12 feet tall or more. So, tell us about these others. You said Nordics, but there's other words for them because they're not always, white.
I call them the human looking because they do come, with dark skin, or Mesoamerican is how one person described them. Looking, Peruvian or something. One guy had an encounter with a human-looking one. He says he looked Middle Eastern to me, and said he was the most handsome man he's ever seen. That's his description I hear quite often.
Oh, really? They're beautiful.
Very beautiful people. But there's another catch-all category, which is really, I call them strange humanoids. It can be little hairy dwarfs, or just 9 foot tall humanoid, unique humanoids that I've never heard before or since, but often described as having very compelling eyes, large eyes. That's pretty common. Bald heads is also fairly common, but you really get a wide variety of strange humanoids. Robotic creatures. Of course, there are reptilians as well. I don't get a whole lot of those.
Okay.
Light beings composed of just glowing light, really. So there's a huge variety of ET types. I know some people think, there's 30 races, 40 races. I'm going to go upward and say it's a parade out there. It's a wide, it's a wide universe.
Wow.
So
So
there's,
these different dimensions, right? There are different dimensions and they're visiting. Is that what's going on?
yeah, I think they do have the ability to travel interdimensionally. I'm not sure I would say that they necessarily come from different dimensions. Based on just the evidence that we have, which includes landing traces and medical evidence, healings and injuries, and photographs, moving films, radar returns, metal fragments. I feel like we're dealing with people like us, physical, but from other planets, but who are very technologically advanced, very spiritually advanced, and do have the ability to travel through dimensions. Which, by the way, we do too. I mean, we can go out of body to the other side and travel interdimensionally.
Good point. That's the out of body. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people do that at night. They just travel and they call it lucid dreaming, but people get bored. We're spiritual beings. So I think the out of body, some people can do it at will though.
Yeah, I got really into it. Same time I started my UFO research, I started having out of body experiences. And wow, I can't recommend it enough. It changed my life. It's absolutely glorious.
Wow. Well, the Monroe Institute, they have different levels that basically teach you controlled out of body travel. So, yeah, I like it. I started doing that. Well, childhood on, but I did it out of two reasons, because, I had some abuse going on there, and then I was bored. So I wasn't like I was, I don't know, special, like, oh, I was just, it's, once you learn that you don't have to stay here, that you can go different places, it's a real kick. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we all do it every night. It's really just a matter of remembering it. It's a natural human ability.
Do you write down things in your journal when you travel at night?
Oh yeah, yep. I keep a dream journal and definitely write down my OBEs. I wrote one book about that. It's my only real autobiographical book about my OBE adventures. Oh, the stuff you can do. Learning about past lives, visiting your deceased loved ones, meeting with ascended masters, going to temples of knowledge or healing.
Wow.
The Akashic records. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's funny. I had one the other night where it was a different experience. I was being sucked through this small tube, and I thought, God, this is tight. And then I went, wait a minute, I don't need a tube because I'm like nothing. So why does this feel like pressure to me? And then I heard, well, you're going further than you've ever gone, and we've got to take you a long way. So I'm like, okay, this is a special tube for sucking my soul in there, boom, teleporting me someplace. But I thought that kind of made me chuckle. But yeah, the big thing is to me is not to analyze these things. A lot of people analyze them it's just write them down, and with time they make sense if they're not understood.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, as far as you have some personal encounters too. Do you mind sharing one or two and really how you kind of got involved with this? Because you said family and friends. How did this all happen? I want to know about you, because this is like, I mean, this is you have the Preston Dennett alien movement. I mean, you've got a whole, I mean, my gosh, almost 28 books now. You have a whole world on this topic. So tell us how this really ignited you.
Oh gosh, yeah, it was actually not easy. I was skeptical of UFOs, really skeptical of anything paranormal, which is odd because I did have a couple of psychic experiences as a young kid, but just sort of pushed it aside, I guess, or didn't think about it. But considered myself a materialist. I was pretty scientifically minded, very interested in science and science fiction, and just that sort of thing. But I remember it vividly. 1986, November 17th. It was actually the day it all turned around for me. There was a report on the news about a sighting over Alaska. And I thought, this stupid pilot has got to be out of his mind. What is he talking about? This is actually a very well-known case. And this pilot, a Japanese commercial airliner, saw a UFO. It was on radar. It followed their plane for miles. It's a great case. But on the news, they just it was a very tongue-in-cheek story. They giggled nervously and moved on.
Oh, okay.
But I remember my brother Mark. I'm like, he said he saw a UFO. That was some years, maybe almost 10 years before this. And I just didn't believe him.
Oh,
And I'm like, Mark, you said you saw a UFO. And he's like, yeah, I told you. And I'm like, well, what did you see? This time I'm willing to listen. And he shocked me. I mean, shocked me to my core when he's talked about chasing this classic flying saucer down the street in this car. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, it had colored lights, a dome on it. Don't believe me? Call Phil and Greg, his friends. They were with him.
yeah, we're with him.
So I'm like, yeah, give me their number. I knew them. I'd met them many times. And they're like, oh my God, yeah, we saw one. And I'm like, oh gosh, So I started asking other people in my family. My sister-in-law had an encounter. So had my other sister-in-law. I had 3 or 4 friends who had encounters. Close up. One had missing time. And stupid me, I bring it up at work. And the lady I'd worked with for years, Diane, she's like, oh, me and my whole family saw one. And Dorothy walks in, and God, I love Dorothy. She's so unfiltered and just really, an extrovert, I guess. And she's like, UFOs, oh, one chased us home from the library. I'm like, really? She says, Preston, it's so weird. We live only 5 minutes from the library, and I know we left at 9, but by the time we got home, it was 10:15. I don't know what happened at the time. And by this point, I had checked out the books on UFOs, and I knew what missing time meant. That usually means a more extensive encounter.
Right, that you've been taken into the ship for some type of medical experiment.
Yep,
Why did they do that? Now, I know that experiments, is it to combine our DNA so we can have human and alien DNA? Is that the purpose?
That's one agenda. I think they've got multiple agendas. Yeah, when I first got into this field, I was not happy. I was, not only had to readjust my entire worldview and felt a little scandalized. I'm like, all my friends and family and coworkers were keeping secrets from me. I was not a happy camper. And as I read these abduction accounts, I'm like, what? Kidnapping? And they're experimenting on people? This is not good news.
Right. This is an outrage.
and what? There's a cover-up? Our government is lying too?
I can't believe this.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I can see that.
But after, pulling back a little bit and looking at the evidence objectively, I've come to realize that UFOs are not here to hurt us. They're not here to scare us. I don't think this is a hostile phenomena. And as we get into the healing cases, I mean, that's one of the reasons why. But yeah, their agendas, one is to create a hybrid race, particularly with the Greys.
Why is that?
We pretty much know. Yeah, we know why. And I've gotten this personally from a number of experiencers. And this is, again, borne out by other researchers.
Okay.
The Greys are essentially human and at one time did look like us, but suffered genetic damage and also had done genetic manipulation on their own race and have lost the ability to reproduce and have bred the emotions out of their race and are now suffering because of it. So they're trying to...
sad. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is. And this is what they're doing. They're harvesting genetic material from both men and women in an effort to revitalize their race and bring back emotions. They're very interested in human emotions, very interested in our ability to feel, very interested in our psychic abilities. It's apparently being human is a really wonderful thing. And they're very interested in our ability to not only be really physical, but to also reach out to these other realms and do astral travel and these sort of things.
Okay.
So yeah, they've got multiple agendas. And if you really look at it objectively and release your fear, because there's a lot of fear associated with this, the media certainly is sort of, I think, encouraged. It's a little bit fear-based, I guess would be a good way of putting it. And I don't think it's fair. If you look at this objectively, you will see that there is a bell curve of behavior on the part of the ETs, which falls under the same umbrella as human behavior, but is skewed far more towards the positive than human behavior. I mean, we do horrific things.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's seriously.
War.
Yeah, and that is one of their main concerns. That's something when someone is taken on board they're told, don't be afraid, we won't hurt you, come with us, this sort of thing. And people have a lot of fear, particularly when they're being physically examined. But people who move past their fear are given wonderful messages, warnings about nuclear proliferation, environmental destruction, pollution, our warlike ways. That's very common. People are taken to the engine room, shown how the UFO works. And literally,
that's cool.
In detail. I mean, seriously.
It's organic, isn't it? Isn't it organic?
Yes, many of them are organic as we would think of it. These ships are alive. I'm not going to say all of them. Often they run on sort of gravitational principles, electromagnetics. That's a very common theme. They're trying to move us off of fossil fuels. But
that'd be nice.
Very, very strong spiritual component to all this. And as I looked at what's taking place when someone's taken on board, I'm like, wow, this is actually really encouraging. They seem to be interested in as Bud Hopkins, a leading abduction investigator, that they are interested in the most lovely aspects of being human. And I'm like, wow, that is absolutely true. And the number of healing cases is extraordinary. So I've come to look at UFOs not as, experimental torture chambers. No, that's not it at all. They are floating hospitals. They are little Noah's Arks. They're collecting plants and animals to a remarkable degree. I'm not worried about the human race or any species going extinct because they are collecting them, because we are having a hard time treating our own planet the way we should.
Right. And then there's things that are suppressed, like you said. I mean, we were talking earlier pre-show about how I'm upset we don't have hovercrafts. Forget the fossil fuel or any of that. I want a hovercraft immediately. So we've had technologies available, probably from film, that's been suppressed, that's here. So, but more importantly, I would imagine that, that if they're interested in the human race, they certainly don't want us to blow it up. I mean, it may sound funny, but I mean, I feel like we've done it before, so we don't want to do this again on this planet, and we want to make sure it's that it doesn't get out of balance, not askew. I mean, do you find they're concerned about this too?
Absolutely. It's their number one message. And we have had this technology since at least the early 1940s. It's not just the Roswell crash, which is absolutely, I mean, if you look into it, it's definitely a true incident. But there have been many of these types of incidents, and more than dozens. I think it's closer to hundreds. So we do have this technology, and our government has suppressed it. Governments across the world have. And this is why ETs are doing what amounts to a grassroots movement and contacting people. Yeah, this is what they're doing, contacting people one by one or in small groups, or they're doing waves of sightings over city centers like Phoenix, the Phoenix Lights. That's a really good example. And that happens every 5 or 10 years or so, some major incident.
But, I'm seeing it really increase. I will tell you, Preston, about a month and a half ago, 5 minutes from me. So it was Charlotte, North Carolina. It was more like Indian Trail, North Carolina. Okay. And there it was a series of maybe 30 big lights and pattern moving in the sky.
Yep. Contact is escalating for sure.
And different city. I mean, that was, and the newspaper took it, and not much was done or said. The other night I was outside looking, and I'm like, what is going on? I was looking outside. Of course, now that I have attention on, anything that I have attention on, it seems to kind of, manifest. And so I'm looking outside, and I'm seeing this thing go. I'm like, it was really bright and kind of flickering. And I'm like, this is, I don't know why, I'm like, this is not a star. And then it would go down, it would go up, and it would go side to side, and then it would appear and unappear. I'm like, and it was really bizarre movements, but it would be way over here and then way over there. And I'm like, okay, so it could be, it could be my own mental state or ego, but I thought they were looking at me. Now, I don't know why I got that connection. I felt that, like, oh, they're here for me. Hey, but I don't know why I felt that way, but I did. I'm like, they know I'm looking at them.
They do. They do. They are very telepathic. This is what they do. And the way they're moving like that is to show you that this is not a plane. They put
This
on
is
what?
not a star.
Yeah,
It's
they
not
put
a
on.
plane.
It's not Superman. This is a display. They are doing it on purpose. When someone sees a UFO, they know it. They're doing it on purpose.
Like showing off a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Why? To
Because
say communication?
they want us to know they're here. They are moving towards open official contact. They have met with our governments all across the world, and our governments have not been truthful, transparent, or forthcoming. And they're like, okay, if that's the way you're going to do it, this is what we're going to do. And they are, and now UFOs are a very popular subject. It's the #1 thing in movies and video games and science fiction. And
it's true.
So they have let people know that we are not alone, which I think is paramount. This changes the way people behave. It brings us together, knowing that we are, not the center of the universe. We have all kinds of friends out there, and absolutely, I think they're putting on displays. There's all kinds of waves over like Alabama, the Gulf Breeze wave in Florida. Withville, Virginia had a huge wave. Hudson Valley in upstate New York. They are doing a publicity campaign. Is what they're doing.
I never thought about that. Now, do you see them? Do you follow? Or you probably can't help not to, but follow like patterns. Like, okay, it's seen here, it's seen there, it's seen here, and the frequency.
Yeah, yeah, and I find it very fascinating. They remind me of like a musician or an author doing a book tour, or a musician doing a concert tour, because they're going from place to place to place. I did a book called Schoolyard Ufo Encounters.
Yes.
Because there was this very famous incident in Zimbabwe at Ariel Elementary School where UFOs landed next to an elementary school. And all the kids saw them. And I knew of some other cases. So I'm like, let's dig deeper. And I found 100 cases, no kidding, of them visiting schools. And half of them are elementary schools.
Is it really like they're trying to slowly, so people get used to this, like a PR campaign? See, I've never thought about that.
Absolutely. That's the conclusion I came up with. They're saying hello in a very clever way. I mean, showing themselves to children is, children are so non-discriminating.
Yes.
They don't know, haven't heard the term UFO. They're not fearful of something that might be different. So I think it's a very clever way and very effective to sort of announce their presence and get people used to the idea that, we're not alone. Because our government is spending enormous amounts of money and time and effort on making this subject look ridiculous. And with our tax dollars, it makes me so angry.
Right. Well, it's like gaslighting on a big level. It's like, come on, this is silly. But then you're right. I mean, like everything you see these days, Guardians of the Galaxy, all these different movies that are out. I mean, it all has to do with different species or different crafts. So, do you think that they're trying to prepare? I mean, you said they have an agenda. They're especially the grays. We're talking about, there's many, but and there's many kind of grays, as you said as well. But they're trying to get their rays to be sustainable and to be more human-like with emotion and to procreate, which they don't have any sexual organs, do they? I mean, how do they multiply?
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah. They do. Okay, they do. Okay, I've never asked that. I mean, an interview question. Do grays have sexual organs? Like, oh my God. Oh no, that's crazy. I never really thought about that, but they do. It's just.
Yeah, I'm not going to say all, but I believe, they wear very tight jumpsuits.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the reasons people have come to that conclusion. But no, if you look into it, and I've talked to many contactees who have moved very far in their, I guess, relationship with ETs. And they tell me, oh yeah, they are people just like us in most respects, more like us than different. They really are just people.
Right. They're just a different level. I mean, we don't even know our evolution. And we were talking, I had Simon Bound on here with the Past Lives podcast about he had a gray encounter, but we were talking about the different dimensions. We don't know if our soul, we have, a small part of our soul here on Earth. We don't know if we're on other dimensions. A part of our soul incarnated as another species. We don't. I mean, us is a pretty big topic. So I think that this is really eye-opening to know that we're not alone. And then what the agenda doesn't always have to be a fearful one. Now, what about? I want to talk about these. Let's show your cover. So the healing power of UFOs. So maybe we can go kind of move into that direction. We know that they're here. They have a PR campaign. It's like, we're here. Hello. Never thought about that. Love this cover. Did your sister-in-law do this too?
Yes, my dear sweet sister-in-law who married my brother Mark. Yeah, she's done the covers for this book and probably most of my books, and illustrated along with me from the beginning. She's a very talented artist and sits down with the contactees and draws their ETs for them. And she's good. Yeah.
Now, was she one that also had an encounter?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
As a little girl, she had face-to-face encounters with little blue beings. She didn't tell me that at first, because people can be very skeptical, and skeptics can be pretty rude about it, and I certainly was. So
were they the pretty blue ones with the big eyes that were real pretty, but they're blue and they're not big like Avatar?
No, hers were very short blue beings with sort of flat squashed faces.
Okay.
But she said they were all beings are beautiful. Let's face it.
Well, that's true. That's true.
I mean, really, they are. It's inside is what counts.
Well, no, that's true. That's true with everything, except for the. I guess that some of the reptilians aren't so nice. I might have a self-gain kind of thing going on there, but other than that, wouldn't you say the majority of them are benevolent and might even go as far as interested in us, right?
Oh yeah, I absolutely do feel that way. I think that we don't have to worry about them taking over our planet. I mean, they've been here for millennia. We know this because of petroglyphs and cave paintings and this sort of thing. They've been around for a very long time. They could have taken over this planet so long ago. No, they're not here to take over. They're not here to hurt people. That is not their agenda. I think we've got a pretty good handle on their agenda. And it's very positive. I'm not worried about it. I'm not going to say it's all puppies and rainbows.
Right.
Because, there are some people who've had horrific negative encounters.
Right.
But I don't think that it's super common. I personally don't get a whole lot of those encounters.
Okay.
But
yeah, you would know if you had that. And it may be also, I'm not saying that it's not bad and, someone didn't experience that. I would never say that. But it also could be, it could be just the nature of fearful being there, not understanding their agenda. Now, did some of these people that have had these experiments, and you've got some photograph of some illustrations here, photographs. Yeah, I'd like to photograph. Oh yeah, man. So do any of these people experience pain while doing this, or is it just the fear of the unknown?
No, people have experienced pain, and I would say that that's, and I do have some problems. It's very hard to rationalize, when someone's kidnapped against their will. I mean, that's against the law on every country on our planet. What are you doing? That's difficult for me to
understand.
To explain, and the worst I get are painful examinations in which some of these grays show very little compassion. It's as if they are doctors on a mission, don't have time for niceties, have a terrible bedside manner, and are going to do what they're going to do, and treat people like a lab rat. And I'm very upset about it.
Right.
But on the other hand, people come away from their encounters spiritually transformed for the better, and many, many of them are healed. And I have 20 cases plus of just eye healings alone. Really?
Now, do they use apparatuses, or is it light, or how do they heal? Like what this is, they're doing or is it an experiment, or are they healing the eye, or what was this? This is a case, I assume, that was illustrated.
Yeah. There's many cases. Well, let me just run across a couple. One of the first I heard about was from a very early reported case. A Peruvian customs official was out on his veranda and saw a disc way high up there, 1,000 feet or so, and it sends down this violet beam of light, which strikes him on his face and chest. And he wore thick glasses for his nearsightedness. And this was a very quick thing. This beam strikes him, retracts, and this object darts away. And it cures his nearsightedness instantly.
Wow.
It's gone. He doesn't have to wear glasses anymore. And he
Was that intentional? You think, was that intentional, or was that just the nature of being near someone like that, a higher,
I think it's intentional because they specifically struck him with a beam of light. There are cases of people who've been next to a UFO and been healed. And I wonder about that, if it's just the energy. But I've come to the conclusion, it's my assessment, I should say, that it is intentional. They also cured him of rheumatism. His rheumatism cleared up. And that's just one of them. Like one guy, he's gone public, Alberto Fernandez of Florida, had suffered a pretty severe injury to his cornea as a result of I believe it was a fall. And doctors diagnosed it. They're like, oh my God, this is pretty bad. And he had an experience where ETs came into his bedroom and healed him with a beam of light. And he went to the eye doctor, and who was astonished. He's like, what happened? Oh my God, your eyes looks normal. Because he was looking at like he was going to suffer permanent vision loss in his eye. And it was cured.
Like 100%.
Mm-hmm. People have been cured of night blindness, detached retina, nearsightedness, a wide variety of eye problems. So I think that they're doing this on purpose. Absolutely.
Now, do they usually, when the healing occurs, are they taken up on a ship? Like you've got some images here. They're doing some kind of healing. It looks like a healing pad. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. I looked into this. Half the cases do take place on board a UFO, and people are basically undergo some sort of operation or procedure. A number of cases take place while a person is outside, 25% or so, maybe 20, as well as perhaps in your home or bedroom, a house visit. And this really surprised me. I mean, it shocked me. And this was the subject of my first book, and I found 100 cases, but put out another book because I found so many more. 10% of the healing cases take place inside a hospital. No kidding.
No, wait a minute. This is wait. A real hospital, like a human hospital?
Inside a human hospital, in your hospital room. And in will walk a person who doesn't look quite normal. It can be a gray. It can be a what we would call human-looking ET.
Oh, where's the other one? Here we go. The human-looking ET.
Yeah. This is a case from Florida where there was a series of events that got a lot of attention in, I think it was the province of Georgia, Florida. Or I mean, not Florida, Georgia, Russia. And this guy was healed of chronic liver disease. Got a lot of cases of people cured of, well, you name it. Heart disease, liver disease, kidney stones, 30-some cases of cancer.
Are you serious? You mean gone?
Gone. Yeah.
Now, does the person being healed, like this illustration of this, what did you say, Georgia, Russia, of this humanoid type being that might look like a hospital worker, but not really, does this person, are they, obviously at some level they're cognizant of this. I mean, how does that, do they remember it fully, or is it something that comes out later? How does that work?
Both. I would say some just have spontaneous healings. Some of these might be angelic, I think, because, when a being of light walks into your room, people try to categorize it as one way or the other. So I think some of these might be angelic, and for that matter, some angelic healings might actually be ETs. It's sometimes hard to tell the difference. One lady, she was suffering from chronic renal failure, hadn't been able to urinate for 2 days, went to the doctor.
God.
He was horrified. He's like, why didn't you come sooner? You need to go to the emergency room. You need dialysis. You're in total kidney failure. You're having renal failure. Go to the emergency room right now. And she says, okay, I will. And she went home to call her family and let them know what's happening. She called her work. She called her friends, said, pray for me, pray for me, pray for me. And she fell asleep on her bed and woke up to have these short beings massaging her kidney area. She couldn't move, and they were not grays. They were just these sort of short, dark-skinned beings. And this went on for a good hour or two, she says. And she wakes up the next morning feeling really good, and goes to the doctor. And he says, oh my goodness, you're fine. She went to the bathroom that morning before going to the doctor, and everything was fine. And the doctor was just pretty upset, happy, of course, but he couldn't figure it out.
Right.
And she told her family, because they were all worried, and they're like, what happened? She says, well, I think I was visited by angels. She didn't really want to say ETs because she didn't know.
Yeah.
She wasn't quite sure what happened until 3 months later, she was taken on board a craft. And this time it was pretty apparent what was going on, that these were ETs. And they said, we need to examine you. And look, here are your kidneys. They laid it out on a table and put this device over her, which I've heard described many times. It's sort of this X-ray machine.
This type thing?
Well, no, not exactly. But they put this, it's a little kind of, it's similar to that, actually, a panel type thing, which projects your organs in 3D color. 3D living color. And they showed her kidneys and said, look, your kidneys look great. And she's like, yeah, they do. And then they brought up her liver, and there was all these dark spots on it. It didn't look good. And they said, your liver is unhealthy. You need to stop drinking Diet Coke. Which I thought was...
told her that? That's amazing. All telepathy, of course, right?
Yeah. It's almost always telepathy in these cases. And they will give dietary advice. They tell people to stop eating fatty foods, don't smoke. This is not the life we had planned for you. Why are you smoking?
Do they stop afterwards? I would. I'd be like, man, it took the universe to say to stop drinking Diet Coke.
Yeah, absolutely. And this sometimes happens naturally after an encounter. People just lose the desire to smoke. But yeah, they absolutely will heal and do heal people and dispense dietary advice and all kinds of advice, and have healed people of cuts, bruises, broken bones, back problems. One lady I interviewed from Norway, such a neat lady, didn't want her name used. She's a professional and doesn't have a history of encounters. A lot of these people do. Because I was looking.
I was going to ask you that. What is the ratio between people that have never had an encounter, they can recall that had an encounter? Because I'm like, what is the interest that does this being having the being here?
Yeah, I figured it out.
Oh, you did? I figured you did. Okay.
It took me a while because I'm like, who's being healed and why? And
yeah,
this is weird. It's evenly divided between men and women. It can happen to very young children, people of all ages, race.
So what's the common denominator?
It's all over the world. There's cases stretching back 100 years. It's not education. It's not religion. It's not political affiliation. It's not where you live. It's evenly divided between men and women. I was really scratching my head with this. I'm like, why this person and not that person?
Yeah.
And I did figure it out. Half the cases do involve people who have a history of encounters, who are what we would call contactees, who have family members who have encounters. We do know that these ETs do seem to be very interested in certain genetic lines.
Right,
and
family lines.
Yeah, they follow up people. If you're having onboard encounters, dollars to donuts, so did your mom and dad, or maybe your aunt or your grandparent somewhere in there. This is tracking your family. And we've got cases stretching back multiple generations and longer for that matter. One lady was told we've been following your genetic line since biblical times. Jim Sparks, who has fully conscious encounters. They showed him his genetic line going back to Victorian times and back Roman times and all the way to like caveman times. No kidding. So about half do seem to involve people who are, closely associated with the ETs, but no, half don't. I'm like, okay, well, why? And I found it. I figured it out, and it was so shocking. And it goes back to this lady who had her, that I was talking about from Norway, who had no history of encounters, and in walked these grays and flip her onto her, she's sleeping on her side or her back, and they flip her on her stomach like a rag doll. And she's like, who are you doing? What are you doing? Oh my God. And they didn't answer any of her questions. They were, pretty clinical about it, held this device, pressed it against her back. And this took, just minutes, if that. And they stepped back, walked through the wall. She jumps up and can see outside. There's this eerie blue light outside her window. Everything looks weirdly interdimensional. Jumps up, runs to the window, and the light switches off, and everything's back to normal. She's like, what the heck? And that's when she realized her back wasn't hurting anymore. And it was cured. She had had a very severe back injury. And I'm like, well, what do you do for a living? Because this is a question you ask.
Yes.
And she says, oh, I was a graphic artist. And that kind of rang a bell because I've got a lot of cases involving artists. And she says, but actually, I'm not doing that now. I'm actually a human rights and animal rights activist. And my bells went off. I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Oh my God. No, because this is what I keep seeing. It's it's social workers. It is human rights activists, people who are fighting against racism. It's doctors, it's teachers, it's entertainers, it's artists, police officers, inventors. People who are doing good work for humanity are the ones who are much more likely to receive a healing. Musicians, a lot of musicians. So these are the ones who are being contacted. And
that's so interesting. That makes sense. So they're trying to give them an edge and help them. But they're following them because, art and music to me is like channeled from a higher realm. And then if someone's coming in a help flow to help humanity, that's kind of a selfless.
Yeah, this is why I love these guys, because they're like, okay, who, they're going to the people who are trying to help the world. This really speaks towards their agenda. It really does. And why I'm not afraid of them, and why, if I see a UFO, I'm walking towards it. Maybe not right away, because people have gotten radiation sickness from getting too close.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's not all of them are going to be friendly. So you have to use your discernment, discriminate. But by and large, I think these are good people who are doing their best to help us without taking over, because that's not going to help us. We have to solve our own problems. As every parent knows, if you do everything for your child and they're alone in the world, well, they're not going to do so well. They have to learn to care for themselves. So,
that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's why you cut them slack, because of all the cases that you've seen, that it's just purely healing. They don't have to do that. So they're helping people. These are just acts of kindness.
Yeah, I documented 300 cases, and I have to pretty much every major researcher out there has them. I don't know why there's not more discussion of them, but Barbara Lamb, Yvonne Smith, Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs, John Mack, Brad Steiger, Tim Beckley. I mean, you name it. They have all got these cases. So it's actually much more common, I think. Edith Fiore said that half the people she worked with, she was the first PhD person to write a book on UFO encounters. She said half of her clients have been healed. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. In my own files, it's closer to maybe 20%. So there's some discussion on how common this is, but I think the 300 cases I found is the tip of the iceberg. Most people don't report this.
It's true.
It's absolutely. I've always asked that question. I'm like, all right, did you report your encounter? Did you call the police? Oh no, I didn't. Did you call a UFO?
Yeah, but why would you? I mean, you could call them. You could, as contact someone like MUFON, because they wouldn't think you're crazy. But what are you going to tell the police?
they are not interested usually. And try calling the Air Force, see what happened. They will usually refer you to to the UFO organizations like MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, or NUFORC, National UFO Reporting Center.
Okay.
But most people don't know about those organizations. And I'm going to say 1 in 100 people have reported their encounters. So the 300 cases I found of healings could easily be times by 100, which would be, what, 30,000? So, and I think it's more than that, because there's spontaneous remissions. That's a well-documented medical phenomena. And people have healings occur in a wide variety of ways, by the way. People are cured of chronic illness from a near-death experience, from past life regression, from an out-of-body experience, from being struck by lightning. I mean, lightning.
Oh yeah, like Danny Brinkley. Yeah.
I'm telling you, this absolutely happens. Mary Clamser suffered from muscular dystrophy and was wheelchair bound, was struck by lightning, and it cured her. Lightning is more likely to injure you, by the way.
I was going to say, I don't know if I'd stand in an electrical storm holding a key and a kite. No, I don't know about that.
Please don't.
Or be on the telephone in a really bad. I had actually a friend that was electrocuted through the phone, and she received psychic abilities, but she's terrified. But I said, look, it's great. It's good to have. It's good information. It's not just because different, strange or different doesn't mean bad. But people, again, you can choose to perceive what you want. But yeah, she was too. Wow, this is a big topic. So I'm looking at the even NDEs. So let's go even deeper here. And again, we can't solve anything or know 100%. But let's say these near-death experiences, because I'm a near-death experiencer, multiple one, and I've had other near-death experiencers, and so many. I would say it's extremely common that not only are they completely healed, like one of mine, I had a nail went through the head on the nail head, and I was playing. It was under a dresser. I had a contusion. I shouldn't be right, but I'm 100% right. And then other things impact to the head and to the face. I'm fine, but it's like complete healings, but most of them come back with psychic, or they either come back psychic, mediumistic abilities, or they can something even more a little stranger. They can come back and never played a musical instrument in their life, and now they're not just a regular phenomenal, like Mozart level musician. Or like David Ditchfield, he's on here, and he's going to be back on here. He does symphony type stuff that he heard and now can do. And then there's another one, Kevin Zadai, who could play multiple musical instruments. And then there are some people like Peter Anthony that can just do numbers, like Rain Man numbers. So they come back with this ability, and you wonder in those in between states, there are people that are basically just out of body that are in the room, the hospital room, let's say, or whatever room. And they're kind of, see it from different perspectives, but don't really go out to the galaxy or to other levels or what have you. But there has been near-death experiences that have had alien encounters, that see grays, that in a different realm. And I think it was Dr. Kenneth Ring that did research on this. And one of my episodes, I had Cheryl Gottschall, that was from Australia, that talked about this phenomenon, which makes you ask, are some of these angels or angel ET, or that's kind of they don't have to be grays. They could be some other light being. And you always hear about the beings of light. And so you wonder, where does that line cross? I mean, when you really look at it deeply, where does that line cross? Because then some of these higher level beings could be in the angelic realm and also be considered ETs. They could be both, which is, a lot of people like to segment it out. But what do you feel about that? There's something going on with when someone has a close near-death encounter, or even sometimes they'll encounter other worldly people. Has that come up in your investigations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've looked into this deeply. I've studied near-death experiences and interviewed a number of people about out-of-body experiences. I studied, bad spirits as well, terrible hauntings, angelic encounters, and I am convinced that a near-death experience is a near-death experience, and a UFO onboard experience is, exactly what it appears to be. But there is this number of cases with a real sort of bleed through and a lot of commonalities. And people have had a near-death experience and see grays. And people have been taken on board a UFO and seen spirits. It's very similar in some ways. And being taken on board a UFO is very much like a near-death experience in that you are sort of taken to another dimensional realm. It opens you up spiritually, and you can come back healed. So there are some really strong commonalities. I don't think that these are the same experience in different disguises, so to speak, because there are some people who feel like, oh, UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, it's all the same phenomena wearing different masks. No. If you see your deceased mother, that's that's your mother.
That's not Bigfoot.
So I don't want to place these all in one basket. They're just very similar with strong commonalities. And it can have the same effect. A person can come back from an onboard encounter with their psychic centers and all their chakras spinning like wild, and they start. It's very common, actually. People come back from an onboard encounter with strong psychic ability, abilities to do hands-on healing, or kind of like
I was going to
Reiki.
ask you healing abilities all of a sudden.
Very, very common. I think that's one of the most common things I see. But channeling as well, that's very common. Past life recall, people start having all sorts of out-of-body experiences, which is very true for people who have near-death experiences. All this stuff is true.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. I've never looked at it like that. That is, I have all of those, but I've never realized that people that have onboard encounters have similar. But this is, wow, no wonder you're interested, because there is some overlap.
Yeah, there sure is. I mean, I had one case where a guy had a UFO land in his backyard. Next day, he had a Bigfoot encounter, same place. Following that, he had a poltergeist outbreak in his home. What is going on here? And I interviewed these ladies who lived in Hollywood and had a terrible poltergeist outbreak. I mean, these were bad ghosts. They were did possess them at one point.
Terrible.
And following this, they moved out and found another apartment, and the whole haunting ended. And this UFO drops down out of the sky and hovers over their apartment. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think there's a weird connection here. When someone has a near-death experience, when someone has an onboard experience with a UFO, or maybe a strong haunting, it opens them up. It raises their vibration.
I agree.
And it sort of allows them to start seeing spirits. I can't tell you how many contactees are also mediums. I mean, a lot.
This makes sense to me. I mean, this totally, because your vibration is raised, you can't help it. Next thing you know, you're experiencing, feeling, seeing something about another dimension. It could be the people that have crossed over, and then you can get up higher and see other dimensions and other things. So this makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, right. It's got to do with your bioelectric field too, because people who have near-death experiences and onboard encounters will affect machinery. Pretty common. Oh yeah.
Really? Like batteries. Like I have a whole basket full of watches. I'm like, I would keep buying watches and batteries. And I didn't know about that at the time. And then I kept changing. I have clocks everywhere because I keep changing. The clock keeps stopping. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, because you can also be in control. Because I'm like, I need my clocks to be on time. So I decided, I did a thing where, like a meditation to not influence that, to be in control of that. So, but yeah, I didn't realize that was also, I turned on my TV once, a 75-inch TV, and I was like, where's the remote? I really want to turn it on. It turned on. I was like, that is cool, but I don't know how to control that. I was like, that would be really handy. But yeah, I've heard people, car starting is their ability. Car starting. I don't know if you've heard of that one. I went out to my car, and I always talk to my car, name it, and it went beep, beep. I didn't even have any keys in my hand. So, I mean, who knows, but you're right. I mean, doesn't even, like with ETs, extraterrestrial, I mean, they also influence um,
Yeah, I heard about
batteries.
people
And
who like walk under streetlights and they'll turn off and or lights going on, and I'm like, hey, I want to try this. So I went into my bathroom one day. I had 4 little lights over my mirror, little vanity lights, and I looked at one and I stared at it. I'm like, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. And
yeah,
it didn't work. I was so disappointed, and I went back, sat down, and went into the bathroom. I think it was the next day, and boom, the light right next to it burns out. I'm like, hey, I think I did that.
you did do that, but it was a delay. It's just sort of like getting information. You might perceive it the future. I tell people I'm getting sometimes it happens. I'll get information. I'll go like, I don't know if this has happened or if it's going to happen. Usually now I kind of know, like, I feel like this hasn't happened, or I feel like this is something in your past. I kind of get a feeling, but there is no time on the other side. But the fact that you did it was a delay. So
Yeah, there's definitely no time on the other side, or it moves differently. I think time is more of a perception of the physical plane, that it feels very linear here. But you go to the other side and you can visit the past and you can see the future. And often when I would have OBEs, I have precognition. I'm like, oh, this is going to happen. I know. I've had a lot of that.
yeah.
And that's super common for people who have OBEs or onboard experiences. Precognition is another thing that the ETs are trying to wake us up to our natural superhuman powers.
Right. Well, I mean, I have memory of Atlantis and the whole bit. I was telling someone I was at Edgar Casey Center and I was with a group of people. I was talking there and I was saying blah, 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 blah. And, because it was a safe place to talk about it there. And they studied this and go, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And we had to talk about it. But I think that we should not limit ourselves, that we are much more aware, and our natural state is working in an intuitive state. But we've become so attached to the physical that we have forgotten. I think a lot of this is just remembering. I don't think anything is lost. I think we've just forgotten we're this way.
I so agree. People sometimes ask me, how old are you? And I'm like, well, 5 billion, or actually I'm infinite. Because we are. And I think we are part of this universe. We're an indivisible, integral part. We have all the power of the universe within us because we are the universe.
We've been a part of it from the beginning, but we've lied to ourselves so we can pretend, have the amnesia, come back, play another whatever model we are this time, whether we're male or female or this or that. We get lost in the trap, like I was telling you. I think that Philip K. Dick book where you would take the solution. I think it was back in the neck, and then you would pick your Barbie or Ken, and you would live in the townhouse with this cool sports car and have the cool life, and then you forgot. I think that's us. We've forgotten our true history, which might not really be on this planet. I think it goes much deeper.
Yeah, we're an Earth school, and I think it's a difficult school because we do lose our memories. We have a disconnect to where we're from, but we can learn things on Earth you can't learn in other places, like about pain and loss. You can develop your compassion and just all these really amazing things that you really can't do on and on the other side, say, like Robert Monroe.
Yes.
We mentioned him briefly. He's the out of body guy, Robert Monroe Institute, and he's got really good at it. He wrote 3 books. They're amazing. I love them. He said, and I just love it. He said, people who graduate from the Earth School are well respected throughout the universe.
I bet.
And I'm like, hey, I just can't wait for that day where I'm on the other side and I'm like, oh yeah, I went to Earth. Maybe. They're like, really? You went to Earth? What's pain? I'm like, oh God, how do you describe pain?
Oh my gosh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, it's funny. Like I always get from my guides and so forth. Like I'm like, thanks for your help, or my angels, and they'll go, oh no, we need to thank you. It's like this must be like the ghetto of the universe. It's kind of rough, and they're like, no, we it's tough there. We respect you. So but again, like you said, you're learning. I think the lessons are more pronounced here than they would somewhere else, where it's smooth sailing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And huge props to every single person on earth. I love you all, and you are so brave.
No, it's true. And I also wanted to, I know that we were getting close to our time, but I wanted to ask you this. What about, have you had any encounters with, because everything's on the table here, there's no judgment or anything. We're all here just to learn and just not to live in fear, but just live, like a child, like in curiosity and amazement, right? Like, wow, who knows? And the thing is, even the things that I'm sure even with you, with your research, you're like, not sure about that. And you just kind of put it on the table and keep going. And you don't have to get an immediate answer, even make a decision. You just kind of, look at everything. So so we're talking about some of these, say for now, the grays or even other species that are interested in the planet for let's just say, other than the really mean reptiles, forget them. Other than that, we'll leave them off the table right now. But they're benevolent and they're interested in us doing well and succeeding and going forward. How many of those have you experienced? Any that have what do you call it? DNA, alien DNA that are here? Have you interviewed any of those people?
I suspect that a lot of the people who are contactees are what we would call hybrids. Definitely, yeah, some have told me that they are and have been told this by the ETs. And let's face it, we have ETs that look just like us. This raises serious questions about human origins. God bless Darwin, but I'm not sure I buy that scenario.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Because it just doesn't quite make sense if you really look at it from an objective scientific point of view. The variety of life we have here on our planet would take a lot longer than 5 billion years to evolve. And the fact that there are humans out there that aren't from here raises serious questions about human origins. There's a book out by Ellis Silver, which I was so delighted to see. It's called Humans Are Not From Earth. Yeah. So I've been talking about this for a while, and so I looked into this book, and he's like, well, we're not really adapted for this planet. People have lower back problems. The temperature isn't really quite right for us, and all these things. Yes. He raises a pretty compelling argument.
Really? Man, I'm going to check his book out. That sounds wonderful because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can identify with that. And I'm also always missing 4 hours. Like, I feel like it should be a 28-hour day. I told you you're my people. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm always feel like, where are they? So there's so many questions there. But we, this is a good place to start and have people to ask. And I think it's exciting. I don't think it's scary. I'm like, it's like,
no, we are the ETs.
We are the ETs. Why are we afraid of ourselves?
Yeah. And I'm so serious about that.
Yeah.
People talk about, oh, they're manipulating our genetics. I'm like, well, look, if you read, like the Bible and all these ancient writings, looks like they've been doing this for a while.
Yes.
And they've been upgrading us. And I'm pretty sure this is true because I've looked into it. There's a lot of cases where people have had what I call health upgrades. A lot of contactees don't get sick or very rarely get sick. There's a case I always love to quote, a guy from Florida who had lots of gray encounters, and the grays appeared, and he's like, oh, you're taking me again. If you're going to take me, heal my hernia, would you? And they're like, oh, we know of this condition of which you speak, and we will repair it. Pretty much a direct quote, and they did right there. So he says, why are you taking me? And they said, we are interested in your genetic potential to live a long time. And it turned out his grandfather was 106 and still intelligent, still active. And for that matter, look at what's happened to the human race over the last 100 years.
Yeah, we
have a lot longer, over the last 200 years, we've pretty much doubled our lifespan.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think it might be due to these guys who are visiting us, who I think are good people. Yeah, not every ET out there is here to help us, because every time I say, oh, this person was rescued, lots of cases of people being rescued from drowning, from falls, from hurricanes, from car accidents. Oh, really? Yeah.
Really? This is interesting. Okay. So, and from what species is it light beings that people think is angels, and that's why they don't really come up as an ET, or what is it?
All of them. Or you know, or just a UFO that's there. Grays, human-looking ones. In fact, it doesn't really matter what type of ET a person contacts. The message that people get is always the same, whether it's human, hybrid, praying mantis, grays. They all warn us about our environmental destruction, our warlike ways, our nuclear proliferation, this sort of thing. It's the same message from every single one of them.
And it's all around the world, right? People that, all around the world.
Yep, I've got healing cases from every continent, pretty much. Well, not Antarctica, but yeah, everywhere.
So the common message would be that there's been a very long concern in our well-being.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think
Very long.
I think if people really have to step back, people have to overcome their fear. You know, there's a lot of fear mongering. I think there is I hate to say it, but there is an evil element on our planet. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this awful division. We wouldn't have this unequal distribution of wealth. We wouldn't have the greed and the corruption and the races and all the difficulties we're dealing with, which are an illusion. We are all one.
Yeah, it's true. We've all been everything before, including reptiles and stuff. And different everything. So it is an illusion, but it's a way to separate that we're
don't believe it. Don't believe it. If you talk to people, they will give you the shirt off their back once they get to know you. And it doesn't matter what political affiliation you have or what race. Or, I mean, seriously, people are good people. Most of us, I think, are absolutely wonderful.
I agree. Oh yeah, I've even talked to people considered criminals or bad people, and I get them laughing and feeling good about themselves, and they're like want to make sure I'm okay and take care of me. I'm like, I'm good, thanks. But I think it's funny that people again have forgotten who they are, and they're basically good. And so this whole topic is so fascinating. I know that we have gone a little past our time. Would you come back for another show? This would be fantastic.
Yeah, of course. Are you kidding? Yeah, I love this subject, all of these subjects, and you're a delight. So yeah, I'm there.
Oh gosh, I love it. I could just eat this up like a big bowl of cereal. That's pretty simple. So thank you so much, Preston. You've been great.
Hey, thank you. It's been an honor.